Good day. So, we are the presenter today. I am Rochelle Subiate.
I'm Frances Andrea Ramos.
Cheska Nicole P. Bergonia.
And we are gonna discuss the modernization theory, which is one of the modern theories of development. So, objectives. Understand the concept of modernization theory and its main objectives. Analyze the stages of modernization proposed. Evaluate the criticisms and limitations of modernization theory. And last, reflect on the implications of Rostow's modernization theory for development policies and interventions.
Modernization theory is originated from the ideas of German sociologist Max Weber. Max Weber was a prominent German sociologist, philosopher, and economist. He is best known for his work on the theory of social action. The concept of the potential significant impact on the fields of sociology, economics, and political science. Walsh was an American economist and political theorist. He is known for his theory of economic development, commonly known as Rostow's stages of economic growth. Rostow adopted some of Weber's ideas in his own work on development theory. Specifically, Rostow drew inspiration from Weber's concept of the institutional foundations of economic development. Weber argued that certain cultural, religious, and institutional factors could create favorable conditions for economic growth and development. Rostow built upon this idea and incorporated Weber's understanding of the role of institutions, particularly the legal and bureaucratic structures, in promoting economic development. Rostow's stages of economic growth theory is often seen as reflecting Weberian influence, as it considers the necessary stages that a country must pass through in order to achieve economic development. Rostow emphasized the importance of institutional change and modernization, recognizing that a country needs to undergo a transformation of its social, political, and economic institutions in order to achieve sustained growth. Overall, while Rostow adopted some of Max Weber's ideas on institutions and their role in economic development, he expanded upon them to create his own theory of economic growth.
So, what is modernization theory? So, before that, let me tell you some info about this theory. So, in the late 1950s, an American economist by the name Walt Rostow published an article called The Stages of Economic Growth. There, this article is started and was widely known today as the modernization theory, which theorizes the path of quote-unquote undeveloped countries take to become developed countries. So, modernization theory is a sociological and economic perspective that emerged in the mid-20th century. It seeks to explain the process of societal development and transformation from traditional agrarian societies to modern industrial societies. The theory suggests that societies evolve through a series of stages, with industrialization and economic growth as the key drivers of social change. So, according to modernization theory, as societies modernize, they undergo a series of transformations. These include shifts from traditional agricultural economies to industrial economies, changes in social structure and values, urbanization, increased literacy and education levels, and the adaptation of modern technology. It is believed that these changes lead to increased productivity, higher standards of living, and improved social and political societies. Proponents of modernization theory argue that societies that embrace modernization will experience economic development, improved living conditions, and greater political stability. They believe that modernization is a universal process that all societies can and should strive for. So, it was highly influential at the time, but it is widely criticized by many modern day experts in the field because keep in mind that this theory was developed in the 1950s, a time when countries weren't that they like today's. So there hadn't been any country that you could consider fully developed, but we'll get back to the criticism of this theory later on and to be discussed by the next reporter. So, um, palipat ng slide, Jessica. Okay, so Rostov's theory consisted of 5 stages that go on in this order: the traditional society stage, the preconditions to take off, the take-off stage, the drive to maturity stage, and finally, the age of mass consumption. Now, the traditional society stage describes a society that's low-key and old-fashioned in the sense that life was very farm or agriculturally reliant on. The productivity levels in the economy at this stage are pretty low. All in all, it's a stage where the economy and society is at its very beginning stages, so they're not advanced at all. Traditional if you want to remember that way. But in due time, this society would eventually transition to what's called the preconditions to take off stage, where the economy of said society goes through necessary changes to try to get the economy chugging. This means proper infrastructure being built, the agricultural sector is beginning to be more productive, the mobility of goods starts to increase, allowing for more trade to happen around, and also importantly, financial institutions are established such as banks and all that which is where we begin to see proper currencies being introduced and money flowing around the economy. So next comes the takeoff stage. This is where the economy begins to specialize and you start to see certain sectors of the economy begin to receive a big boost in productivity and experience a lot of economic growth. Think of how Japan specializes in exporting cars. Many decades ago, this is also when cash in the form of investment start to come in. After that comes the drive to maturity stage. This is when the technologies that help the sectors of the economy to take off begin to mature. And the economy by this point would have developed way fast than they are still considered a traditional society. This is also when new sectors of economy begin to grow as well and you start to see a lot of white-collar office workers in the economy. Just to think of your typical office building economy where lots of people are working in offices rather than factories. Working offices rather than the farm. Think about it that way. Now, finally, we have reached the age of mass consumption stage. The working class has pretty good access to consumers' goods and services and can enjoy other things such as sense of security, welfare, and leisure. So, sorry, nag-lag po yung laptop. So, ituloy ko lang. However, it's important to note that 60 years later today, it's very evident that this is not the best way to look at development. The biggest issue is that this theory is very linear, like it would be very hard to generalize history towards a wide range of countries or even cities. each stage of this model for an economy to achieve before they can move to the next stage. But in reality, these criteria don't always happen in the order that it is theorized. But on the top of that, a major question that still remains is that what happens after the last stage? Like we can see countries and cities today that have seemingly reached this age of mass consumption stage. But governments are still continually tackling the issue of continuing the sustained economic growth after reaching this stage. So, what's next? So, the next reporter will discuss the criticisms of this modernization theory.
So there are four criticisms about modernization theory. The first criticism is the Western-centric bias. Western-centric bias ignore the diversity of non-Western societies and their unique paths to development. This tells us that there is a bias favoring Western perspective over non-Western societies, which leads to overlooking the diversity and distinctive development of non-Western societies. Kaya sinasabing modernization only favors Western economies dahil it is only focusing primarily on Western experiences, innovation, and growth, while neglecting or ignoring the richness and individuality of other cultures and their paths to progress. So, criniticize ito ni Gander Frank. So the next criticism is the cultural imperialism. Cultural imperialism assumes that Western values and institutions are superior and disregard local cultures. Imperialism believes that Western values and institutions are superior to others, leading to the neglect or dismissal of local cultures. So sa imperialism kasi, they only think about the dominance of Western influence na ang mangyayari dahil sa popular na ang Western values, mau-overshadow na yung mga unique aspects of different societies. Like for example, yung pagmamano at pagsasabi ng po and opo. Here in the Philippines, very popular itong mga to sa atin. Dahil for us, it is a sign of respect. Sa ibang bansa kasi they don't use po and opo. They only say the name of the elders. Hindi rin sila gumagamit ng tito and tita. So imperialism believes that Western values can affect to local cultures. Criticize naman ito ni Arturo Escobar. So the third criticism is the neglects social inequalities. Neglects social inequalities overlooks the unequal distribution of resources and power within societies. Fail to notice the inequalities, meaning they ignoring the uneven distribution of resources and power among different groups within a society. So, criticize naman ito ni Immanuel Wallerstein. So, last na criticism is the dependency theory critique. Dependency theory critique argues that modernization theory perpetuates global inequalities and dependency on Western nations. Dependency theory says modernization theory keeps the world unequal and dependent on Western countries. So yun nga, di ba? Ang modernization theory kasi only in favors on Western societies. So sila ang mga mas may access into innovation and growth, while the non-Western societies keeps on not progressing into modernized society, which makes us still a poor country. So criticize naman ito ni Andre Gander Frank, Fernando Henrique Cardoso, at saka si Teotonio dos Santos. So, even while modernity has many benefits, what would happen if a person was unable to meet the increasing demand for it? So for us person, very curious tayo sa mga functions ng mga bagay na nakapaligid sa atin. Not only sa mga bagay, but also sa mga living species. Pinagkakaperahan sila, pati nga corals, binibenta na kahit bawal nang ibenta. Mga endangered species, binibenta pa rin kahit na alam nilang huhuliin kung sino man yung nakitang nagbibenta, ganon. Kasi para sa atin, kasi para sa atin, it is, para sa iba, it is their source of income. And once the modernization keeps progressing, the needs and wants also improve. So once they discover na, tawag dito, once they discover a lot of functions and uses sa mga bagay o hayop na nakapaligid sa kanila, they will be arrogant to overuse it, kills it, and so on. In that case, magiging productive ang mga taong i-overuse yung mga bagay at hayop na nakapaligid kasi napapadali nila ang daloy ng buhay nila, especially daloy ng pera nila. And since padami ng padami ang demand, ang demand, um, ang demand ng mga binibenta nila, it can lead to abuse in natural resources. With that, our mother nature will now be hurting because of too much abuse. Kaya ang bounce back sa atin bilang kapalit ng pag-aabuso sa ating kalikasan is mga natural calamities, global warming, and global change. These things are main effects not just of modernization, but to the recklessness of humankind. Reckless act of humankind. Dahil sa modernization, nakakalimutan natin ang importance of resources and just focusing on the end product. In the end, human is still the one who suffers, and after all of the stages of advancement and that created, it is still can totally save human. So, yun lang po. Um, that's the end of our topic.